What is up, everybody? Welcome to week one of the fantasy football season. Welcome to Fourth and Frames, the flagship redraft fantasy football podcast here at fantasyandframes.com. I am excited to kick off week one of the NFL season, talking fantasy football with all you and, of course, with all the great fantasy football minds we have here around the frames. Speaking of around the frames, let's go around the frames and introduce everybody. Nate Markham, Director of IDP Content here at Fantasy and Frames. How you doing, man?
Good, buddy. Good. I redesigned the basement, got a new little office now. I no longer have I still have the green screen, but I elected to go with the background of my actual place.
Nice. Well, it's a pretty cool sports den you got going on over there.
It's one little corner.
Well, you know what? It counts. So see, like this wall right here, sports. The rest of it, I have like nothing. So you're doing it heads and tails above me already. Tyler Heil, head of the Dynasty content here. What's going on, Tyler?
Not much, man. Just spent the last 30 seconds panicking. One, because I had a draft change to draft at 8 o'clock instead of 9. And also because I opened our doc and I thought for a second that all of my notes were deleted, but they're not. So I am very good. Also, Nate, your room looks great, man. I love it.
Thank you very much.
And joining us this week, he has been a fantastic writer since we brought him on in the summer. Charlie Cangelosi, my friend, how are you doing? It's been a long time. How are you?
I've been good, man. It's been a while. I actually just started a job, so I'm.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you, appreciate it. I'll still be here. Obviously, don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. Kind of in the big boy world now, I guess. But
hey.
Yeah, I'm just happy to be back, man. Football's starting. I'm starting tomorrow. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad you're here with us this week. And we're going to get into it right now with some news and notes. But important note. In previous seasons here at Fourth and Frames during the season, we would cover everything. Offense, defense, you name it. Well, now with our successful podcast called Shoot the Gap, which is our IDP-only podcast, all of our IDP fantasy football content will now be heard solely on that podcast. So here, we're just talking offense. We're just talking redraft. So we're excited for that. And we have a comment here from Miss Carrie Whitaker Markham, our Director of Public Relations at the Fantasy Football Expo each and every year. How you doing, Carrie? Nickerson or Knox? I don't know who Nickerson is.
So she's doing our daughter's boyfriend. It's now Twitter world official, I guess. So it was kept incognito.
It's on Facebook too right now. So
yeah. It's fine. He met the whole family, everything. But he has a draft tonight, and so I don't know who Nickerson is. So maybe it's a multi-sport, or maybe he's doing like an EFL or some kind of, or I mean the CFL fantasy draft. He's more advanced than I am, but I gave him everything possible. It's, so here's the best part. We were doing this. He had another draft while we were doing our show before last Thursday, and they were asking her for advice, not even me. I was like, what the hell's happening right now? So Carrie is taking him. She is helping him draft. I don't know who Nickerson is, but you could probably just come down the steps and ask me. And if I have to pause and mute to find out who Hardy Nickerson, it's an IDP from TJ Hawkinson.
Samsonite. I was way off.
Exactly. Auto correct. Her phone auto corrects to Nickerson. I don't know what that is all about.
Yeah, who is Nickerson and why is it autocorrecting that she says
right.
so much?
She's so far into the 1997 Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense that Hardy Nickerson auto populates on her phone now. That would be Simeon Rice.
Well, Charlie, who you got here? Would you take Hawkinson this week versus the Eagles and that improved defense there in Philadelphia, or would you take Dawson Knox, who just got the bag today, brand new contract extension, going against the Rams team that has decent safeties, decent linebacking core here? Who are you taking here if you had to pick one?
Yeah, I'm gonna chase the bag on this one. I think, we're gonna not in agreement over here. The Bills are just the overall better offense. Although I've been watching Hard Knocks for the Lions, if the Giants end up being bad, which they probably will, I'm going to be a Lions fan. I love the training camp over there. They're awesome. So head coach Dan Campbell's awesome. He's great. But for week 1, I'm going to go with Knox over Hawkinson for sure.
Well, there you go. Speaking of the Lions, did you see today the news? Here, speaking of news and notes, that the stadium is sold out for this game versus Eagles. That you could only get standing room only tickets in Detroit for week 1.
Wow,
right? And like all attributed.
Sell out.
The question is, do Lions games mostly sell out? And I want.
No.
I want sorry, Detroit fans that are out there. But you would have to assume that Hard Knocks played a huge role in this, and I think the Dan Campbell effect is spreading throughout the Motor City right now. Let's get into some other news and notes. Every time I look at my Sleeper app or I look at my ESPN app, I'm seeing all these players going from questionable to healthy. It's like nobody's injured anymore. Everybody miraculously got healed heading into week 1 this week. Tyler, let's start with you, Nate. Do you have any news and notes that are kind of jumping at you right now heading into week 1, or are we kind of just, this quiet before the storm?
Deontay Johnson is trending in the opposite direction. Sounds like that shoulder is not going to be good. I don't think he plays personally. I don't know if that's breaking news or not, but our friend of the show, Brooke Pryor, mentioned in a tweet today that he said he's done all he possibly can do, and at this point, it's just wait and see. If you're 4 days away from the game and you're not just bullshitting your way through saying, absolutely, I'm ready to go, and then the doctors kept me out, that means you're not playing. Because always blame the doctors if you can do so instead of blaming your own injury. That's the easiest way to do it, unless you're Tyrod Taylor, and then avoid the doctor.
Avoid the needle.
Too soon a year ago. Oh,
a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever.
Worth mentioning is George Kittle. He is trending toward possibly not playing, which is not good for a guy that has trouble staying on the field.
Yeah, it's I hear that's important when it comes to helping your NFL team as well as everybody's fantasy football team, but that's neither here nor there. Chris Godwin shed his knee brace from ACL injury last year, so every report we've seen over the course of the summer has been Chris Godwin is making great progress. He could be ready for week 1, and a lot of us out there who are just like, nah, I don't know. He got that ACL tear late in the season. There's no way he's going to be ready. For all intents and purposes, he's ready. I mean, he should be good to go this week against Dallas in the Sunday Night Football matchup, which will be exciting. You all remember last week, week 1, Dallas and Tampa Bay just put up a stellar performance there, both teams, and I see that both teams do the exact same thing again this year. Yeah, nobody has any other news and notes here. We can go into our first segment of today's show. We're starting a brand new segment this year. We're calling it Plays and Fades, where basically we're going to give you a player that we're playing this week with confidence and one that we're fading and how we're doing that is when we're looking at quarterbacks. We're looking at quarterbacks outside the top 12 in Fantasy Pros ECR consensus, running backs, wide receivers outside the top 24. And of course, this is with half PPR scoring because that's what we like to talk about here at Fantasy and Frames. And then when it comes to tight ends, we're talking outside the top 10, like I said, in half PPR ECR consensus. And with that, let's go to our plays and fades at quarterback. Charlie, who's your play this week?
So I'm going to preface both my plays and my fades with it was really, really hard to pick for either because for plays, I really like a lot of quarterbacks that are starting week 1. On the other side, for fades, I really like a lot of quarterbacks that are starting week 1. So it was hard to pick both, but I found options. For my play this week, I'm going to pick Matt Ryan. Overall, a massive upgrade going from the Falcons to the Colts. Better O-line, better defense, better weapons overall. Matty Ice is that guy. I think he's going to take this team, obviously, to win the division and obviously to win against the Houston Texans in week 1. They were the 3rd worst PFF ranking in overall defense last year. So I think this should be a solid placement for your lineup. And then for my fade, I'm just going to go with Carson Wentz, not really backing it up with facts. It's not an interesting matchup to me. We saw what Wentz did, speaking of on the Colts last year. When he's known to panic, he kind of just tosses the ball up in the air and more times than not results in a turnover. I think there's better options available. He's on my rankings, he's my QB 29, and Fantasy Pros, he's QB 25. I think there's a lot of options this week in fantasy. It's week 1, so we don't know what teams are going to be good, what teams are going to be bad. So it's a good way to measure fantasy value this week. So I would fade Carson Wentz.
Fading Carson Wentz, the Washington Commander. Just so you know, I'm a Commanders fan, but I don't disagree with you. I think that's a smart idea right there. Let's go to a running back position next. Nate, who are you playing this week?
Well, I like this caveat rule that Charlie's implementing because it makes me feel a little bit better about this play. It's definitely more of a multi-flex play, but situationally speaking, I can't believe I'm going back to Mike Davis after last year's fest that we all had when he was supposed to be can't miss in Atlanta. But the situation is ripe. JK, Gus, both banged up, both questionable for week 1. I think that they'll probably lean on Mike Davis a little bit. We know that the Ravens' run-heavy approach shouldn't change. I think a positive game script against the Jets. Not talking negative about the Jets, but realistically, we have a team that was already bottom 4 against the run, top 4 in points allowed to the opposing running backs. It didn't change a ton on the defense from a run-stopping side. I do think the Jets will be better, but I believe it will be a run-heavy approach. Again, I don't think the game script will limit Davis from being on the field. Kenyon Drake, I don't think will have too much play. Again, it's gross. It's probably early, and it's probably only a few weeks. But, yeah, if you have a multi-flex, you're currently at the RB 47, I think you might finish inside the top 36 overall.
Nice. And who are you fading this week?
Cam Akers. So he said recently in a quote, "I know I'm healthy," is what he said. That was the quote, end quote. But then he goes on to say, "Everybody else will just get to see me Thursday. I'm not trying to go show anybody that I'm healthy. I'm just going to go play my game." Yeah. I believe that about as much as I believe that people put A1 on filet mignon because it enhances a steak. And so he's the 1A to Darrell Henderson's 1A, and that's the correlation to the A1. Let's flip that around. So let's be honest. We already saw that his efficiency was horrendous coming off that Achilles. I don't personally believe this matchup against Buffalo is going to stay on the ground anyway. And if it did, let's just say it happened to do so, I'm going to flip that proverbial coin that you asked me about earlier, Jorge, and say, is it going to be Darrell Henderson or is it going to be Cam Akers? Because I think both are likely to be just above average. Akers currently at the ECR is 24. I'm putting him into I would say this, Mike Davis is going to outscore Cam Akers. I say by 4.5 points.
Wow. Okay. Let's go to the wide receiver position. I'll take that. My play this week is Cortland Sutton, ECR 26, going against Seattle on Monday Night Football. Look, I'm sure if you're watching the show and you're listening to this podcast, you've heard the name Cortland Sutton before. You've seen him be productive in years in Denver. I'm sure you've heard the name Russell Wilson before. I hear he's good. I hear he's a good quarterback. I hear he does well for fantasy as well. For those of you who don't know, both Wilson and Sutton have been practicing and working a lot together this offseason, and they're developing quite the connection here. And, when you take that into consideration, let's talk about another player related to Cortland Sutton in this matchup, and that's Tariq Woolen. He's a rookie right cornerback for the Seahawks coming out of the University of Texas, San Antonio. In week 1 of this preseason, versus superior talent at the wide receiving position here with the Pittsburgh Steelers, he allowed Mitch Trubisky to have a passer rating of 143.8, which is ridiculous. His next 2 preseason games, he kind of came back down. He was lowering the NFL passer rating for these quarterbacks to around 70, 76. Look who was going at Chicago. They weren't passing it a lot. Let's look at Dallas. They were protecting Dak. They weren't doing anything. They weren't putting the stars out there. So now you're giving, Tariq Woolen the honor and privilege of defending Cortland Sutton. I just don't see that working well in his favor. I think the Broncos just go into Lumen Field and just destroy the Seahawks. My fade this week, Darnell Mooney, ECR 27 versus San Fran. I've been reading these depth charts all over the internet, and it's so hard because some of them are saying Mooney's going to line up on the left-hand side. Some are saying that Mooney's going to line up on the right-hand side. Whichever side he's on, whether he's facing Charvarius Ward, who is a former Kansas City Chief, who allows an NFL passer rating of 77, or Emmanuel Mosley, who's in the same camp in terms of passer rating allowed, and actually does not allow a high yards per route run. All this translates into the fact that the Bears are going to be a bad team this year. Their offensive line is decimated. It's atrocious. This, like I said in the Start and Sit article that came out today over at fantasyframes.com, this is more of going to be of a Komet, a Justin Fields show, not a Mooney show. So fade him this week. And let's go to Tyler for tight ends.
Yes. So my play this week, I'm going a little bit deeper here. I'm going to take Austin Hooper. He has current ECR of 19 on Fantasy Pros. They're going to be playing the New York Football Giants. 2021, the New York Giants were the 25th ranked defense according to PFF. And I mean, I don't really know if they've done much in the offseason. I know they just cut their best linebacker in Blake Martinez and just kicked him to the curb. So I don't think that speaks very highly of what that defense is going to do. They got rid of James Bradbury, so they're going to have a heck of a time defending the pass. They're going to have a heck of a time defending the run. It's just going to be a really bad year for the New York Giants defense. And the Titans have a bit of a, we'll call it a target vacuum, but it's a power vacuum at pass catcher right now. A.J. Brown was that guy. Who's going to be that guy? According to all reports, it's not going to be Treylon Burks, at least at the start of the season. Nick Westbrook-Akine is highly involved, but, he's Nick Westbrook-Akine. He can be a a professional level pass catcher, but not super productive.
Wow. That is the most backhanded insult I've ever heard. He can be a professional level pass catcher. That's wow.
Hey, there is nothing wrong with being a professional football player that is playing and is on the field starting. Mm-hmm. You are not. It doesn't mean you're going to be some fantasy monster. But anyway, the Titans pass catchers, that power vacuum is up to Austin Hooper and it's up to Robert Woods, and it might be both. I don't know. It's not going to be a very high volume passing attack because it never has been. But I know Ryan Tannehill enjoys targeting tight end, going back to all the good Delaney Walker and Jonnu Smith years. And Austin Hooper was great before he went to the Browns for the Falcons. He was awesome. He's still a little bit of a catch ball, fall down guy, but that's okay. And you can still be productive in fantasy with that.
All right, then who are you fading this week?
I am fading TJ Hawkinson. He's ECR of 8 on Fantasy Pros. He is playing the Philadelphia Eagles, which is very unfortunate for him and the entire Lions offense. The Eagles went out and drafted a monster of a man in Jordan Davis. They drafted a very good linebacker in Nakobe Dean. They brought in another professional level football player in Kaiser White. Not great, but yeah, I mean, in comparison to what they've had at linebacker, sure, great. They brought in one of the most productive pass rushers in the NFL over the past couple seasons, and Hassan Reddick. They got James Bradbury for next to nothing, and they just traded a 5th and a 7th round pick for C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who was awesome rolling down into the nickel and covering guys just like T.J. Hawkinson all of last year. So I'm not feeling good about much of anyone on the Lions offense, and especially not T.J. Hawkinson. So I will be looking for people to replace him with. And there you go, Kerry. Does that answer your question of Hawkinson or not? Go on, Knox.
Very nice, very nice. All right, before we get to our main segment of the show, let's talk about our friends over at Underdog. Look, you use the promo code frames, you get 100% match up to $100. Free money. Love that. With best ball, draft's kind of winding down, what can you play? An underdog? Player props. Answer 5 questions correctly, you make a whole lot of money. The fantasy footballers last year, they record their show out of Arizona, and Arizona didn't have DFS until last year. And, one of the guys for the footballers, he answered 5 questions correctly on a Thursday night football game. I think it was the Panthers and the Texans. He won like $40,000. Folks, you just got to answer 5 questions correctly, over-unders. During the Fantasy and Frames pregame show, we'll go over some over-unders that we think you should play this week. And, so definitely head over to Underdog. A lot of cool games there. And for any sport you want to, do player props for. So head over there, use promo code FRAMES, get a 100% match on your deposit up to $100. And with that, we're going to go to our trusty old segment here that we've had on 4th and Frames for years almost. You know what time it is, folks.
And now it's time for our weekly segment, Flex Off. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready because it's time to flex off, flex off, flex off.
How long you been waiting for that, Nate?
God, a little bit.
Didn't see that coming, did you?
No, did not. Like, I didn't see that coming. Like the Leprechaun #4, Leprechauns in Space. It was caught me off guard, and yet still somehow didn't disappoint as much as it did.
Well, that's what I get for recording this 5 minutes before we go on air. So that's fantastic. But everybody kept on complaining each year. Oh, where are the drops? Where are the drops? Well, the drops are here. So for those of you who do not know, our Flex Off segments here basically revolve around 2 analysts going head to head over each position, giving you their take as to why their player is the player you should be playing this week versus the other. And then we have one of us who is not participating in the Flex Off Challenge, basically be the officiant, and basically declare, hey, you won this matchup this week. Different from previous years where we would just do flex plays at the running back, wide receiver, and tight end. We're going to be including quarterbacks here. So we're including the whole super flex aspect here of the Flex Off situation here. So let's start at the quarterback position. We got Tyler versus Nate. Tyler, you want to go first here and tell us why your quarterback is the person you should be starting this week?
Sure. I just had to draft Chris Godwin real quick.
Yeah,
Good for you.
Nice.
Yeah, feeling good about it. All right. So my Flex Off choice here is Mr. Jameis Winston. He has a current ECR of 16 over at Fantasy Pros. He's going to be playing at a terrible Atlanta team. I wrote in the doc that they're just not going to be given a reach around by the Saints, and I don't think they're going to be. So it's very unfortunate for them. The Saints will look to focus on their shiny new pass catchers. Michael Thomas is kind of new to them. He hasn't really played with half the guys on the team. They just brought in Jarvis Landry. They just spent a very high draft pick on Chris Olave, and Alvin Kamara is still there. And Alvin Kamara makes his hay in fantasy through the passing game. So I think the Saints are going to use Atlanta as their proverbial University of Albany tune-up game and really get that offense clicking on all cylinders. And I think Jameis is really going to benefit from it and throw quite a few touchdowns.
All right. Not bad. Nate, you're taking the other position here. Who are you recommending people start this week?
Yeah, and so contrary to the Jameis Winston against a terrible team where game script will probably lean towards a more heavy running game, but we don't know because this could be very easily New Orleans. Let's see what we got with Jameis. But in a super flex, or if you're not starting one of your top 12 quarterbacks and you have to look, you have a late last minute injury on the waiver wire, one Justin Fields has the opposite of what Jameis Winston has, which is not an easy University of Albany game. In fact, actually, he has one of the more difficult challenges of the week against the San Francisco 49ers defense, which can be super aggressive and maybe not necessarily the play that you would want to go for. So why do I pick Justin Fields? Obviously, like I said, I don't want a boring floor. I'm looking for Sistine Chapel-esque ceiling. And the only person on the waivers that can provide that would be a Justin Fields. Yes, we know that Justin Fields wasn't exactly the most sexy rookie year of anybody, but it doesn't take much to see that there is the upside. If you look at Fields last year, he did have 4 QB1 weeks on the season. Weeks 8, weeks 9, weeks 14, and 15. In those weeks, week 8, he faced said San Francisco 49ers with Fred Warner, with Nick Bosa. It's not like they were missing pieces. And what did he do? He had 10 carries for 103 yards and a touchdown, a good for the QB5 finish on the season. Now, here's the part about Justin Fields that intrigues me going forward. They no longer have Matt Nagy. That is the quarterback fantasy killer. And if you dig a little bit deeper, what's the one area of Justin Fields' game that we all want? We want the rushing upside, the dual threat, the Konami code, the cheat code, etc. Typically, the best quarterbacks in the league that have quality legs have designed run and designed yards from the run. Jalen Hurts, for example, had 401 yards. Josh Allen had right at 400. Lamar Jackson, 373. Kyler Murray, 256. Where was Justin Fields, you ask? At 53. The Bears just did not utilize his rushing upside. So of the 53 yards from a design standpoint, that ranks behind Jamar Chase, behind Dwayne Eskridge, behind Ryan Tannehill, behind Marcus Mariota in 13 attempts, behind Tyler Huntley. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Just pull out Dwayne Eskridge.
I did. He was just on there in front. Just to give an example of design runs from a non-running back position. But this is the opportunity that Justin Fields needs. It's not San Francisco. That's not the greatest opportunity, but they should be down. There's a potential for garbage time. And I think that they're going to be able to utilize his legs like they did against San Francisco, get him outside the pocket a little bit more and take advantage of his dual threat ability.
All right, Charlie, you're the new one here. I'm appointing you the judge here. Who made the more compelling?
That's really funny because I had a draft on Monday. It was a fairly big draft, 14 teams, 1 QB, 2 running back, 3 wide receivers, so like really deep. And my 2 QBs actually are Justin Fields and Jameis Winston.
Oh.
So pretty solid coincidence, but I'm going to go with Jameis Winston with this one. I have him starting in my lineup. Mm-hmm. I've got, for my purposes, I've got plenty of ceiling upside with Christian McCaffrey's my RB1, so I don't think I need any more upside, but I think it's just a better matchup. That Falcons defense is nothing like the Niners defense, and Nate, you made a fair point about Justin Fields. We talked about this before the show. I love Justin Fields. I think he'll be great this season. I think Winston is just the overall better available option than Fields.
Oh yeah, I have Winston like 5 spots ahead of Fields in my rankings, but
too, yeah.
That doesn't make for fun conversation. I don't want to be like, Tyler wins, but that's the whole purpose of this.
Well, there we go. All right, score 1 for Tyler. Let's go to round 2 here.
Round 2.
You wanted drops. I'm sorry. You've asked me for years, why don't we have more drops on the show? Well, there you go. You're getting some drops on the show. We're going to be talking about the running back position. It's Charlie versus me. Charlie, why don't you go first and defend your running back?
Sounds good. My running back I will be defending is Miami Dolphins' Chase Edmonds. Last year, among running backs with at least 116 attempts, he was 6th in yards per attempt and 10th in breakaway percentage. Chase Edmonds is obviously the number 1 guy on the depth chart. He's getting paid those big bucks. He's currently making $12 million over 2 years, so it's $6 million a year. The second highest paid running back is Raheem Mostert, making $2 million in 1 year. And then Myles Gaskin has a weird contract. It's like 4 years, $2.6 million. I don't know what's up with that, but obviously they're paying him the big bucks. He's going to be used a lot, and I think this fairly new Dolphins offense with Tyreek Hill, they're going to see the red zone a lot. And I think with Chase Edmonds' receiving upside, I think he could be a very, very viable option for your flex option.
Nice. All right. All right. I'm going to go with maybe some low hanging fruit, depending on who's listening. But I'm going to go with Kareem Hunt, ECR 33.5 PPR scoring over at Fantasy Pros. Look, Carolina was 16th in run defense in 2021, and yes, they brought in Corey Littleton and they brought Xavier Woods in there to help improve the defense. And yes, Shaq Thompson and yes, Corey Littleton are actually not horrible linebackers in coverage, which is something that I think would be helpful in getting to negate some of Kareem Hunt's upside, just because he's such a great option out of the backfield. I just don't see it. I think volume is king, as we all know in fantasy football. I think with that, Jacoby Brissett as the quarterback, that's going to limit your upside with your receiving options. Kareem Hunt with Nick Chubb on the field last year when he was healthy had games of 81 yards, 69 yards, 69 yards, 61 yards rushing. So it's not like he's strictly going to be the pass catching back here for this Browns offense. And he was getting you, in half PPR scoring, close to 20 fantasy points a game during that stretch when he was healthy. He's healthy now. He tried that little holdout maneuver, tried to get traded in the beginning of the month, or last month, I should say. Didn't work. He's back at practice. They haven't used both Chubb and Kareem Hunt in the preseason, keeping those guys fresh. Just for me, it's just following the volume, following the talent, which is why I'm taking Kareem Hunt versus the Carolina Panthers this week. So who wants to be the judge, jury, and executioner for this one? Tyler or Nate?
I recuse myself as a conflict of interest.
Fair enough. Nate, who made a better case?
So this was my argument with Charlie going into this is I actually almost don't like having a judge, jury, executioner on this show simply because I have my preconceived notions already. And there was no case that one of you two was going to make that was going to change my opinion between these two running backs simply because I worry, and I'll give the answers. My answer I have higher is Kareem Hunt. Now, the only argument that Charlie couldn't have made against Chase Edmonds is that he knows for certain that the groin injury that he's suffering through right now is going to play zero effect whatsoever. And nobody can prove that except for the groin of Chase Edmonds. Now, he's not in doubt of playing. I think he's going to play. But I worry about reoccurring injury with Chase Edmonds or with any groin injuries whatsoever. So I was already jaded with that. And you know what I mean? I mean, that's the only downside is when you come into this, I have to be compelled beyond a reasonable doubt to change my opinion, where I think maybe a Twitter poll might get people listening to it, going back and trying to hear the arguments for argument's sake. I'm not telling you to change the approach, but I'm telling you that I think it's unfortunate for poor Charlie and the compelling argument that he made that he can't fix Chase Edmonds' groin. And if we're going to start we don't want to go into him working Chase's groin. It's a different podcast, different show for a different time altogether.
I'm good.
All different. Right. Yeah,
I'm fine over here. I don't need to.
He said you did get a new job, so I'm just checking to make sure that it wasn't that job.
No, it's far from fixing groins. It's not even close. Not even close.
Well, just covering our bases there, Charlie.
Deshaun Watson would be disappointed in you.
Oh. That is not too soon, actually. That's perfect timing.
Perfect.
That's the low-hanging fruit that he was. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on.
Wow. Moving on to wide receiver. All right, it's Tyler versus myself. I'll go. I'm going to go with Adam Thielen, ECR 32. Going against the Green Bay Packers this week. Kevin O'Connell, when he was here in Washington, he was, quietly being described as one of the bright new offensive-minded coaches in the league. And what happens, of course, they leave Washington and they go someplace else and have success. He is coming over from the Los Angeles Rams, the defending Super Bowl champions. And everything I've been hearing about the Vikings offense this year is that they're going to be pass friendly, that they're going to be throwing the ball all over. And you look at who they have, in this offense here, they have, obviously somebody who some people are drafting as the number one or at least a top 5 pick in fantasy, and that's Justin Jefferson. Irv Smith, the promising young tight end, is coming back. He's healthy now. Even there's been talk of Dalvin Cook being more used in the passing game. And so now you have, Adam Thielen, who has a tremendous rapport with Kirk Cousins, especially in the end zone, which last I heard is great for fantasy. And let's not forget, they're going against a Packers team who, despite, he's going against a Packers team that, has a pretty good defense on, both the secondary and up front. But Kirk Cousins, in a conservative type of offense last year, was able to light up Green Bay for 341 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 20.5 fantasy points. Why does that matter? Well, Justin Jefferson got 169 yards receiving with 33.2 points, and Adam Thielen was able to coexist for fantasy purposes with 82 yards receiving and 18.2 points. Just everything about this matchup, everything from trusting the quarterback, the trusting the scheme, the trusting the talent. Yes, I understand Adam Thielen's getting up there in age, but again, all the reports out of camp have been he's looking like his old self. And as long as he's able to do that, I see no reason why, especially for this week in a divisional matchup, that the Vikings are going to want to put their pedal to the metal and just kind of, let Green Bay know, hey, the division goes through us now. All right, Tyler.
Okay. Well, I like Adam Thielen. The guy who I'm taking is going to be defended by guys named Aaron Robinson, Darnay Holmes, and Adoree Jackson. I'm going to go ahead and take Robert Woods for a lot of the same reasons that I mentioned Austin Hooper is my play this week. That Giants defense is just going to be outright bad. The Titans, say what you will about their offense. Mike Vrabel is a good coach. He always has that team playing hard, and I think that offense is going to be relatively successful. They're certainly going to miss A.J. Brown, but there's going to be a lot of volume for Robert Woods due to that target vacuum, and I think Robert Woods could push seeing 8, 9, 10 targets a game all year this year as long as he can stay healthy. I'm not writing Robert Woods off as washed. He was really good in LA before he got injured, and he is fully healthy now. So I'm very excited for the number one wide receiver on the Tennessee Titans fantasy value. Woods is he's just going to own that role, at least for the first half of the season. We'll see what happens with Treylon Burks, but nothing has happened yet. And that tells me that Robert Woods is just all systems go, pedal to the metal, put this guy in your starting flex spot and just roll with it.
All right, Charlie, going back to you. Which wide receiver are you, which side of the coin here are you taking?
I got to go with Tyler again on Robert Woods.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm going to agree on the whole target vacuum thing. Robert Woods is the wide receiver one on that team for right now. Also, my Giants are bad. We're not good. We're not going to be good, especially week 1. And then Adam Thielen, I like the Thielen, idea, but I've heard a lot of good things about KJ Osborne. Who's to say that his target share doesn't go up or not? I think that, Woods for me is more likely to just see volume over Thielen.
All right.
Guys, I have really bad news.
What's that, Tyler?
I was 3 picks away in my draft before I went into that argument. I had my queue set up of J.K. Dobbins and Elijah Mitchell.
Why?
They both went back-to-back, and I got auto Josh Jacobs.
Well,
I'd have taken Josh Jacobs over J.K. Dobbins. Unfortunately, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, I don't like. That's just. Please tell us that would have been your RB 4. I know that's not the answer. I know
it would have been my RB2 because hey, hold on, it's in the 9th round. I'm punting on running back.
Yeah, you clearly just did.
Well, yeah.
You just didn't know it was going to be. You were punting a draft pick that you made.
You should see my wide receiver.
I bet they're great. They're glorious.
Love it. All right, let's round out this flex off segment by talking about the tight end position. We got Charlie, we got Nate. Nate, let's start with you. Which tight end are you defending this week?
All right, let's start with a one, Patrick Tyler Fryermuth. I don't know if his middle name's Tyler or not, but I figured if Tyler's the judge, I might as well lean towards the judge and give him the middle name. He was named after Tyler, a hero of mine. If we want to look back at last year, granted, last year is not a direct indicator of how this year is going to play out, but since he did allow the most points to the tight end position, that's now the second time in the past 3 years that they've been one of the most generous teams to opposing tight ends. I don't know if that's a philosophical approach, because I don't think it's just personnel approach, but they're also at a high implied point total for the game. I think it's going to be a pass heavy. It could be a pass heavy game. It's hard to say exactly, because you like to think that if Najee gets started, they're going to lean on him. The problem with Najee is that his efficiency, despite the tons and plethora of work he had, you have to go back to 2011, I believe it is, to find a running back that had over 1,000 yards, that had a sub 4 yards per attempt. So there's a chance that they may just try to put the ball. We heard waxing superlatives of Mitchell Trubisky earlier. There's not a chance that maybe it just, bleeds into 2022. One of the reasons Pat Fryermuth has the potential this week is not only is it just because the high implied point total, Cincinnati's inadequacies in stopping the tight end, but we've seen a change in Pat Fryermuth. Granted, it's been preseason, but last year he was averaging about 8 1/3 yards per reception. So far in the preseason, limited snaps, of course, he's averaging nearly 16 yards per reception. I mean, nearly a double, which obviously is going to be emphatic to a higher point total. And last year, if you look, he was a tight end 13. Tight end 13, despite playing 62% of snaps. We should see a snap percentage improve this year. In that 62% of snaps, which was 20th among tight ends, by the way, he was second in the NFL in red zone targets with 18. Deontay Johnson is a game time decision, and I believe that we're talking about a funnel targets or target funnel. There's a great chance that it leads to Pat Fryermuth and at least 4-5 catches, maybe the 16 yards per reception, and I think he gets in the end zone, which is all you want out of your tight end flex.
All right, Charlie, to you, sir.
Listen, Tyler, if I'm not your biggest fan by the end of tonight, I don't know what else I got to do, man. My tight end flex off pick is Austin Hooper. Just when looking at tight ends outside of the top 10, no one else really catches my eye like Austin Hooper. There's obviously, we've talked about the target vacancy in Tennessee. It's a massive talking point. Also, reports have been saying that Tannehill talked up the acquisition of Austin Hooper before training camp, and they've built a really solid connection during training camp. And now here comes the season, and they get to play my New York Giants, who are known to be bad on defense, and especially against tight ends. So, I mean, I don't know. I just – there's a lot of stuff that Tyler said before. I agree with. It's, use the same argument, but for me, it's Austin Hooper.
I will concede one thing. That is the most genius approach you can possibly take. Take a person's play of the week and use it against me, you sons of bitches, and your wily ways. I'm getting too old. You youngsters and your savvy maneuvers.
Please be
fair.
Tyler,
right.
Be fair, please.
All right. So I really liked your/my argument for Austin Hooper, Charlie.
Thank you. I worked hard on it, yeah.
And Nate taking the number 11 tight end in ECR feels like, it just feels disqualifying. So I'm going to go with Charlie and Austin Hooper.
Oh, dude.
Now, folks, let's get something clear here. Just because we're picking one person's argument over the other does not mean that these players are bad plays. It's just, Charlie sucked up to Tyler before we went on air, and that's just how the cookie crumbles this week. And so with that, that's going to wrap up our episode here of Fourth and Frames, getting you ready for week 1 of the fantasy football season. Make sure you stay tuned to the Fantasy and Frames feed on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, as we have the Daily Fix, a brand new daily fantasy podcast here with Keith Fleming and Joe Max, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern. And of course, later on tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern, we have Shoot the Gap, our IDP podcast here with us, Nate Markham. Gentlemen, good luck to you in week 1.
Thank you as well.
All right, to all you out there, good luck to you. And if you have any questions, hit us up at our various Twitter handles you have here. I'm at Jorge B. Edwards for those listening, at Nate Markham, at FF Tyler Heil, and at Charlie the Third. The E in the is a 3.
Yeah.
So we got to find the actual person who's Charlie the Third spelled out correctly. Just pay for that name, but it's buy them out. Exactly. Don't forget to head over to fantasyandframes.com. Check out our start and sit article that just came out today. Starting on Fridays, we're going to have an article series called Chasing Upside, where we're going to be looking at players who are going to be, we're going to be recommending that have the potential to outproduce their current ranking in ECR and half PPR scoring, both on offense and defense. So look out forward to that. And for everybody else, I'm Jorge. Y'all have a good one.